Good morning. Today we are going to discuss the second semester introductory discussion, especially Micro 2. First of all, as the first lecture, I would like to talk a little bit on the course, and then we will proceed to the important concepts which we are going to encounter in a very brief manner. So let me come to what is actually this course is all about. This is basically an OBE course, like you know, outcome-based education course. So the course is in fact having couple of course outcome. In that, the whole course for MA program is having 9 outcomes. That is what is the expected outcome, or what you call the course outcome in this context. We have different concept, modules. Within that different modules, each module is having a sort of outcome which is anticipated, and after the lectures and all, if you strictly follow, then definitely you may able to achieve that is actually the idea of making a course outcome in that context. Similarly, we do also having the issues of statements in every module. What are the objectives or the statement of the module which the students are going to get achieved. Similarly, what are the kinds of assessment which we'll subsequently discuss in the classes, as well as if you have any inquiry and all, we will definitely discuss on all that. So every lecture is also part of having seminars and other things which will be doing as part of the course. So this is about the a brief introduction regarding the structure, because since it is the first lecture, I would like to talk about a bit on that. Forgetting about all that technical aspect of appearing for the examination, as well as the other requirement of procedurally following the course in a formal sense. So this lecture is going to basically introduce a little bit preliminary kind of one, because being the introduction, I felt normally many people don't do it, but what I felt is to a little bit speak on the concepts and the people which we are going to acquainted with and their concepts, etc. So that is the kind of start which I would always do. Then it will make some time interesting to most of you, and many of the concepts which we had already learned in the first semester micro 1 paper, we will recall some of those ideas being propounded by some of these guys in the economic literature. So the first module and its outline is as follows, like the general equilibrium kind of thing. So where we discuss all kinds of efficiency aspects and how the general equilibrium and is important and been achieved, which is different to that of the first semester, where we discussed everything based on a partial equilibrium understanding. So then we will move on the welfare and social choice framework. That is, I think, interestingly, most of people likes this welfare economics and social choice, but some may not be liking, because sometimes it is too much technical. But I will be as simple as least technical, but I would be clear in the concepts and the kind of way in which we have to learn, critically evaluate all that kind of stuff. And then the third module, in our own setting, discuss about the choice under uncertainty. Partially we have done that in the previous lecture, but only partially. We haven't actually gone to the details of the choice under uncertainty case. And then we will also move towards market failure and information asymmetry. We have already seen different market structure, which was the last module in the previous semester. But that is actually only the structure of the market, and we will discuss that now under different asymmetries and fail how the market gets failed, etc. So that again in the market failure we also go to the detail, because that is now become the prominent understanding, especially when we discuss about the microeconomic context. We'll also discuss about the externality, public good, other aspect of it, which largely fairly covers the uncertainty related aspect of market, and the real discussions now mooted by economists. And the final one is always on the behavioral aspect, especially we had already discussed in the first couple of modules of the first semester regarding the consumer behavior, but this particular module is basically look into the behavioral economics and alternative theories of firms. So this is completely stitches the earlier understanding whether that of the newer situation, earlier symmetry, certainty condition to that of the uncertain information asymmetry condition. So this is how I would like to basically frame the second semester, and I hope that most of you would be liking it, because this is very important to talk about what we are really going to do in this semester. So then I have already given different readings, because this is part of your syllabi, and we have already sent the syllabus and all. But that also you may be looking into different readings. These readings are basically essential readings. Some of that I normally refer while I'll give lectures, and some are fundamental microeconomics of Snyder and Nicholson. Okay, then one of the interesting work which you need to read is microeconomics in context of Goodwin and Torres. Okay, so Harris, Goodwin, and Roche Torres, and then wherein of course the intermediary books for having a preliminary understanding of every concept, so you can go through it. And there are other books which I keep referring on every module. The first module normally which discuss the things, and every module of course discuss all this kinds of discussion based on the lecture I'll give. And indeed there are issues of assessment normally students used to ask. So 40% of our assessments comes from the continuous evaluation, such as assignments, presentations, and other stuff. Then the other remaining 60% comes from the external evaluation of conducting a final test, etc. So this is how it is. So for your information, let me stop this introduction by saying what is the course structure and course modules, etc., which is going to be dealing with, and the detailed syllabi is already been sent, and you can look into it. So in any case, if you haven't received, you can ask about that. Now let me come to the lecture. This is a very first lecture. So what I thought, instead of going to the details of efficiency as envisaged in the part of as a beginning point, let me introduce some of the guys which we discussed and some of the guys which we are going to discuss very deeply in the upcoming lectures. So normally we know that the microeconomics is largely having the influence of the neoclassical economics or marginalist school of thought, etc. Or you can, some people even got influence from the Austrian schools, etc. So This is also already a known fact, especially when we deal with microeconomics. This is very important. So there are many stalwarts, or the economists, in fact, contributed. So some of their contribution we had already encountered, because however, I haven't talked about the details of them or anything. But being the first lecture, let me introduce a couple of these guys. So you might be heard about um, John Henrik Tunen, then Anton August Corno. We have already discussed Corno. In fact, the last couple of lecture was talked in the first semester was about the contribution of Corno and his equilibrium conditions and contributions, etc., especially in the duopoly model and oligopolistic market, etc. And his contribution of even non-cooperative game we have already discussed. Again, Gossen's work, William Stanley Jevon's work, Leon Walras' work. These are the original stalwarts whose work is going to be discussed in the first instance. That is, the general equilibrium portion, in fact, talks about all of their contribution. Now, let me speak a little bit on them. The marginalist revolution, that is what is my title. I would like to talk about. Need a little tour. So we know that Johann Henrik Tenen wrote about books, The Isolated State with respect to the agriculture and the national economy, way back in 1826. In that, he talked about explicit optimization principle, agricultural production intensity as function of distance. So this is very important. Intensity as a function of distance is, this is now many people directly or indirectly use without referring even to the contribution of Tunen. All right. So similarly, we have Kurno. His research into the mathematical principles of theory of wealth, especially published in 1838, talked about the profit maximization in competition, monopoly, duopoly, the marginal conditions like margin rate which is equal to margin revenue equals marginal cost conditions, etc., were originally been proposed by him. So precursor of, again, as I said in the beginning, the non-cooperative game. So we will discuss a very detail about his contribution in the later modules, and not right immediately the first or second modules. Then we also have Gossen, Developmental Law of Human Interaction, in 1854. In that work, he originally discussed the diminishing marginal utility principle, which is later all these ideas being brought as principles of economics by Marshall. But all these ideas were being given by many people. Of course, Jevons, Walras, and Menger had in fact influenced by this fellow, that is Hermann Heinrich Gosen. And then we have another set of stalwart like Stanley Jevons' Theory of Political Economy in 1871. In that, he talked about maximize pleasure is the problem of economics. To maximize pleasure is the problem. Then we will discuss all this in detail in the upcoming discussion. Again, in the equilibrium condition, especially the marginal utility decreases the quantity, Gosen's first law, again being formulated by William Stanley Jevons. And the equilibrium of marginal utility by price is equating with the price, which is also the marginal utility y by py. That is, this Gosen's second law has also been formulated by William Stanley Jevons. So in that sense, Gosen's work has been clarified more rigorously by Jevons, and that's later been adopted by Marshall. So this is a kind of microeconomics trajectory which you can see in the partial equilibrium understanding. All right. Then it comes to the general equilibrium case, Leon Walras' Element of Pure Economics, that is in 1874, and later in 77. General equilibrium, he basically drawn from Candelian Quincey Quiseney interdependencies been brought in, and he formulated his theory of general equilibrium, where he discussed about the atonement grouping of equilibrium. He introduced the idea of auctioneer, announced a revised price until market clear. These are all important concepts which is economics uses these days, even for formulating many new technical concepts. Okay, so in that sense, his application of Gauss and second law is also very important, and everywhere you basically in microeconomics you encounter the contribution of these Jevons and Walras understanding of economics as the refined one in the whole trajectory of economics literature, economic literature, especially the microeconomic price theory literature. Now, then we have in the 20th century, especially in the beginning of the 20th century or the end of the 19th century, the people like Pareto, Edgeworth, Clark, Wicksteed, Wicksell, whom had in fact given profound shaping of this microeconomics, which we are going to discuss. Okay, because in that the first name is Pareto, no doubt. We have used Pareto extensively everywhere as the first best solution for efficiency condition, etc., or the unanimity condition. We will discuss all that in the social choice and other subsequent places. Of course, the mathematical, the clinical exercise of economics also been done by Isidro, Edgeworth. Then you have John Bates Clark, and of course you all know that Clark had given immense contribution, especially in the American literature. Clark's contribution was very, very important, especially even in teaching also. His contribution is very, very important, and we will discuss all of their contribution one by one. So Wilfredo Pareto's Manual de Politique is actually what we discussed. Walras explained Pareto's laws of income distribution, that price not classes get shares. So again he made use of log fractions, W income, log x, etc. So ordinal not cardinal utility for individual is also been introduced originally by Pareto, and this is imply that we can compare individual across. Okay, that is interpersonal comparison of utility is impossible. This is what Mr. Robinson talked about, especially in 30s in the economic journal. So these are all in fact indebted to the contribution of Wilfredo Pareto in that sense. Again, Edgeworth also talked about mathematical, used all the Edgeworth box diagram, where you can see that in the controlled environment you can make equilibrium. So whether you talk about partial equilibrium or general equilibrium, the application of his techniques are basically the foundation of these two guys' contributions, very foundation of that. So again, then you have marginal productivity theory discussed by Clark and Wisted and Wicksell. So then you have basically economists like Karl Menger, Eugene Bembarberg, Friedrich Wieser. These guys also contributed extensively, especially the other side of microeconomics. Of course, the capital theory was the discussion of capital theory, especially the production technique discussion, and who has to own how much, etc. Been advanced by these guys. This is in fact a departure from the libertary value of Adam Smith or Ricardian, or that kind of knowledge discussion where uh, different to that, to this particular one. Now there is a second concept which is called capital, and how capital being originates, and why should we pay for capital, or the profit being the share of capital, though the technically or conceptually the word is not wrong, not right. So all this has been basically made by this guy, and all that has been articulated, as I said, by none other than Alfred Marshall, to make microeconomics as a what guiding principles of economics in that sense. So from Keynes, reflection. An economy must be mathematician, historian, statesman, philosopher in some degree, must understand symbols and speaks in words. So this is what is actually Alfred Marshall. Of course, I don't want to talk much on Alfred Marshall, which is also given here. So he is one of the best known economists of modern times in that sense, no doubt, especially microeconomics. And the classical, neoclassical, and so all this discussion, we're also being part of it. And again, people can talk that there is an issue of classifying people in different groups and all, but I think they all contributed, irrespective of their political or whatever kind of affiliation. The advancement of the microeconomics of today is indebted largely to these guys, including our Pigou. Is what is the first point I would like to talk about. And then again, this period were in fact shattered or shackled by the contribution, the criticisms of others, which in fact led to the disintegration, at least for a while or a time being. Especially this started in late 1925, especially after the demise of Marshall, and then till 1950s. Okay, by the end of 1950, the subject again got its primacy back. So I think this is a very important period. That small stint of 25, 30 years is what has normally been discussed as the breakdown of marginalism. And there are many people said that this during that period it has been treated as has no scope. But there are many important advances in microeconomics in fact happened during that period, especially the contribution of Paul Samuelson, then the invent of game theory, social choice theory of Arrow. All this is in fact started built up in the late 40s. So late 40s to the late 20s, from late 20s to late 40s, the period was actually a grim period for microeconomics development is concerned. With a few exceptions in that context. But other than that, the importance of microeconomics was never been fallen. Okay, and then of course there are a lot of crises happen, and that crisis, in fact, this is very important. That crisis, the subject, in fact, created the strength and equipped the subject to basically, overcome and be the masters of other subject in that context. So, economics, in fact, had a lot of crisis. If you look into the theoretical and applied applications of economics or the evolution of economics, these crises are in fact strengthened economics to master as one of the leading uh, social science discipline. And with this, I would like to actually stop today's lecture, because this introduction is very important, because we have seen that there are different problems involved, especially to blindly look into the aspect of microeconomics, especially the idea of certainty vis-a-vis efficiency of 100% to that of inefficiency and uncertainty and information asymmetry. So all this is in fact amounts, all this development of economics of the later kind being amounts to this weakness which was being identified in the post breakdown of marginalism. So that is why I am very particular to speak about this instant, because the Harlan Hitch report, we know that unlike to phrase it as actually the demise of the discipline, what it is actually, it strengthened the discipline in that context. So I would see opportunity in your failure, so that if I am seeing opportunity in my failure, then that is actually a greater step towards betterment. So this is in fact precisely happened in microeconomic discipline, and that is why microeconomics primacy never been fallen after that. But again, it doesn't mean that it is actually undisputable. All right, and there are many work in fact perfected this subject because of the critique which people were trying to basically level against microeconomics. So, with this introductory note, let me stop today's lecture, and I'll directly come to the lectures on efficiency and other aspects. Basically, the general equilibrium part 1 would be discussed in that context. I'm thanking you for your patient listening, because that is the strength of my lecture. So we will continue with this in the next lecture. Thank you so much for watching.